Doubleshot Espresso with life coach Tasneem and Ayesha. We are talking about the need for control. How do you deal? How do you deal with controlling
with
people?
controlling people, right? That's the question of the hour, right? And I'd like to say is that, of course, barring the control, which is borderline violent and abusive, those would have, different measures of options and solutions. But if it's something where you just feel that, look, my relationship, my friendship, or my relationship with my boss, my manager is just on an unhealthy level of control, and I think I can do something about it. There is no abuse or violence involved. The first, as goes with everything in life, is communication. So communicate. Try to sit down with the person, with your spouse, with your best friend, with your manager, with your team member, whatever it may be. But when you're communicating, I recommend using I statements like I feel belittled, or I feel hurt, because that kind of takes, it's not like you make me feel like this or you did this. So because that makes it blaming, and then that person immediately gets defensive. But saying that, when you do this, I feel like this, is a good way to communicate. And then discuss ways of delegation. That's really, really important, to divide responsibilities, shared leadership, even in a work environment, or be it in a marriage. I feel shared leadership is the way to go, because in that sense, both parties feel involved and are aware of happenings, and it helps the relationship to prosper. And of course, offering alternate courses of action to replace that behavior, that instead of you doing X, how about you doing Y, just so that will help me feel better.
I know somebody who told their boss that they were a micromanager, and the next day they were fired.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you feel that this communication is not going to help, especially in a professional environment, then consider distancing yourself. I mean, sometimes physically, if it's possible, but sometimes just mentally, from what they say and what they do. So जो बोलते ना, एक कान से सुनो दूसरे कान से निकाल दो. Of course, easier said than done. But if you're in a situation where you cannot do anything, talking is not going to really resolve the situation, you really need the job, whatever it may be, then make sure that you develop or practice a hard skin, a tough skin, so that what they say just bounces off you. And if they micromanage you, try and manage it as best as you can till you plan an exit strategy and find yourself another job, because after communication comes distancing yourself. If that also doesn't work, you've set your boundaries, and it's not working, I think it would help to distance yourself from that situation.
And actually, this ties in with a quote that I have, that you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude towards what happens to you.
Yes, absolutely. Because we do not control other people. वो लोग कैसे सोचते हैं, क्या करते हैं, वो अपने हाथ में नहीं है. But अपने हाथ में अपनी reaction, अपना response. As they say, ना, how can you allow somebody else to make you feel something? Because you need to be in control of your own feelings. Of course, again, easier said than done, especially when you are in a loving relationship. वो power हम दे ही देते हैं by default for somebody else to influence the way we feel. But especially if that person is repeatedly abusing that power, you need to take that power back. Because if you notice, रास्ते चलते कोई भी आपको कुछ भी बोलेगा, आपको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. शायद आप in the moment कुछ react करे, but ज्यादा आपको कोई emotionally impact नहीं होने वाला है.
Right.
But when it is a person that you care for, love, or are in a close working relationship, these things bother you. But then you will have to learn to take that power back. I want to also pause over here and talk a little bit about setting boundaries, because I really liked something that had come into my mind with regards to that. A lot of times, when we talk about setting boundaries, we assume or we communicate that you cannot do this, for you henceforth you cannot do this. And that's a boundary where you've said, कि भाई henceforth आप ये नहीं करेंगे. Now, listen to this, and this is important. I'm saying that's not entirely a boundary. A boundary is where the opposite person will need to do nothing. but you are setting the boundary, so you are taking control. So I would say henceforth आप ऐसे नहीं करेंगे. अगर आप ऐसे करेंगे तो I will do XYZ. So now you have set the boundary because you've said that if you do this, I am then needing to do that. And it was explained very well to me with an example of a parent and a child. So imagine a child in an elevator pressing all the buttons random, blah, 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 blah. And you are a mom and you're exasperated. You have a million things to do. And you're like, he's just not stopping every time he's doing this. And you're in this third place that you visited in the day for some reason or the other, and he's done it again.
And you have to do it with those sound effects.
Blah, 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 blah. Now, a boundary would be, beta aapko ye nahi karna hai, bas that's it, now stop it, no more of this. But that's not a boundary. A boundary is, see, listen, sweetheart, this is not really a good thing to do. You are doing this far too often, just pressing all the buttons. It's inconveniencing other people as well as delaying us. If you do it again, mama will have to come and stand in between you and the buttons. So that's the way it's going to be. So now you have taken control and set a boundary, which has you taking control and taking action, rather than just saying, don't do this, and that's your boundary.
It's interesting. What if it's the person in control who is using the same method to almost threaten the other person? So if you behave like this again, or if you do this again, then I will never speak to you again, or I will take away this privilege from you.
Yeah, and that also will happen, especially when it's excessive control and damaging control. And then I would go back to communicating, saying, you speaking like this makes me feel as if you are actually controlling me. This is not healthy shared relationship. We are not really discussing it. My perspective is not taken into consideration. And I would really, so you can bounce it off with another boundary and say, if you say something like this, where it's if this, then this, I'm sorry, then we are not going to be able to continue that conversation on that day.
Oh, a lot of games. And a lot of boundaries.
So sometimes, I feel verbal combat, for the lack of a better word, or effective communication in a proper sense, wins the day, because to break a person who has a pattern of a controlling behavior will take a little bit of conversation. Ek hi to communication mein shayad na ho paye. But, just banging at the same nail head again and again will, inshallah, make a dent eventually.
How should you react when you are in this situation where you're married to somebody controlling?
Yeah, so in terms of reaction, I feel respond. Firstly, try not to get too reactive. In the moment, we tend to lose our plot. So try to stay away from yelling, screaming, anger. It never really solves anything besides escalate the situation. But when you're choosing a response, I feel the first is to sometimes take a time out. That really helps to diffuse a situation, and it creates a pause to be able to ruminate and come back with some valid points with which you want to put your point across. Also, it has helped sometimes with people who have a very controlling nature is to change the subject of conversation. So that's one way of doing it, is creating a healthy distraction in the moment, and then you can go back to having a detailed conversation about it. But if obviously these are ways of, how should I say, flight, where you're buying time or you're not talking about it. But if you really wanted to fight it out, in the sense, face it, I would say sometimes counteracting with logic also diffuses a controlling behavior, because controlling behavior stems out of emotion, some kind of insecurity, as we discussed, need for validation, appreciation, power, whatever you call it. But when you reason with logic, it confuses that controlling person, because they have no comeback. And they're usually using emotion as a bait. So if you have some logical explanation and facts with which you can combat that conversation, then that would help. And many times I have noticed, when I had this person that I was referring to, a friendship which was very controlling, I feel that just calling them out on their fear, So, acknowledging their fear. If a controlling person is jealous about, something that you have or a relationship that you have with another friend, it may be helpful to respond directly to their fear of abandonment. That, if you feel that this is in any way going to impact our friendship, it's not. Don't worry. We are very secure in our own relationship, and you mean a lot to me. So something like that, calling them out and explaining to them and calming down their fear. Because as I said, that if it is a diagnosed disorder, a lot of us have generalized anxiety disorder and it's not even diagnosed. And there's so many of us moving around like that. But they then use this as a coping mechanism. So you want to calm their fear down, and things should be okay from there on. So I feel these are a few ways in which you can choose your ideal response if someone is being in a controlling behavior with you.
Excellent point, because what they want is to evoke an emotion from you.
Yeah.
And if you don't show that emotion, it takes all the fun out of it.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. How do we let go of control?
Yeah. I think this again is a very important question, because sometimes we don't even realize we have that need in us. And I know you and I have had many conversations where we feel, no, we need to control, we need to be on top of things, but again, balance is key. And I would want to reiterate that before we talk about this as well, because some level of control is good for you. It keeps you on your toes, it keeps you on track, it keeps you achieving your goals. So some level of control is absolutely beneficial. But if it is getting out of hand, a few ways to control it. I think the first is to identify what is the root cause for you. What is making you become a control freak? Again, as we mentioned earlier, I feel that it'll tie down to two feelings. It'll be a feeling of needing certainty. So that's safety and security, needing to feel safe and secure. So some level of certainty, because uncertainty throws you off. And significance. And when I say significance, feeling significant, feeling appreciated and validated. So if you want to loosen your control or balance it out, I think create an illusion of safety and validation and appreciation for yourself and other means. So you are not feeding it out of other people or in other areas of your life where you feel you are actually damaging the situation. So creating maybe, what else makes you feel safe? Ask yourself that. What else gives me the validation and appreciation? Do you think if I journal every day and write 3 great things that I have achieved in the day, or if I request my spouse that, hey, you don't appreciate me enough and I'd love to hear something nice about me on a daily basis. So finding healthier ways of filling that void or gap, whatever is your root cause, will help you loosen the grip on excessive control. And I loved what you had shared is building on your self-awareness, because there is no self-regulation without self-awareness. And if you are not even aware that I have these behaviors within me, you will not be able to improve anything, So being sensitive to your interactions with yourself and with others, realizing how they are impacting you and others, is a great way of loosening that grip of negative self-control that you may have. And then, like with everything, I love reprogramming the mind in the sense, even the language and vocabulary that you use within your self-talk, that I need to get this right. Or, because that perfectionist mind, which is working all the time within, which compels you to stay on top of each and everything, because if you fail even in one area of life, then you are an absolute loser. That mentality, that limiting belief that you have set for yourself, those need to change. So self-awareness work also includes a healthy amount of reflective journaling as to what are these limiting beliefs that I have put into my mindset, which really need to be reprogrammed. I need to change my self-talk. I need to relax. In certain areas of your life, start small if you wish and say, okay, where my friends are concerned, I will just go with the flow. Earlier, I used to always have a say and say, we will do this or we will do that. But in this area of my life, I'm starting small. I will never say anything. I will just go with the flow and see how that feels.
Yeah.
And baby steps along the way will help you get into that journey. And lastly, I would also say that, getting an outside perspective sometimes and adopting healthier habits. Meditation is said to calm the mind down. And, there are a lot of effective guided meditations which are available to let go of control and go with the flow of life. Any breathing work will help you stay calm and more peaceful. In fact, worry, they say worry is also a form of control.
Yeah.
Because you're worrying so much about the future that you want control over the future, that you're spending so much excessive time worrying about it.
Right.
And we know how worrying becomes a stressor, and any kind of breathing work, meditation, or otherwise yoga for many other people calms that excessive worry that may be there in your head. So I feel practicing that, and sometimes a trusted friend for a different perspective, or working with a professional also helps in learning techniques that you can use in your daily life.
Yeah, and I think there's so much we've discussed on Radio Azad, Azad's shows about uncontrollable factors and controllable factors. That's a big thing, that you have to have a realization of all the things which are not in your control. And we, like you were saying, we're spending so much time worrying about those that, we're losing sight of things that are within our control. Our reactions, our response, our attitude, our actions, all that is in our control, rather than, what will happen, can happen, should happen, and what the other person is going to do. So I think it's like you're saying, reframing.
Yeah.
What
I do with myself when I catch myself becoming excessively controlling in a certain, maybe a project I'm working on or any aspect of life, is what we talked about when I said either what if or what is. So I ask myself, am I in the what is, or am I living in the what if? And even if I'm living in the what if, what is the worst that can happen? And that worst, how is it going to impact my what is? And that allows me to actually become more productive with my solutions, rather than just stressing and worrying and becoming a control freak. So, this what is and what if is a great, verbiage to bring yourself back to the moment and say, hey, I'm going to pause and reflect here.
Yeah. And shift the narrative. So instead of being controlling, be a mentor.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll still get that motivation and productivity, but you're doing it in a much, much better way.
Yeah.
Anything you want to end with?
I just have a quote, which actually is a really, I would say, a common one, but something that has always stayed with me, because it's so true, and it really makes sense to me. And it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That's a classic one.
है ना? It's a classic one and makes so much sense, because थोड़ा बहुत तो कंट्रोल हम सभी कर लेते हैं, और करना भी चाहिए, अच्छी चीज है. But एक wisdom to know कि जो चीज पे मुझे कंट्रोल नहीं करना है, उसको मैं I'll go with the flow of life. I will let go, and I will enjoy life right now, right here.
Do download the Radio Azad app to listen to our live shows, Doubleshot Espresso on Radio Azad.